We're up. Okay. Shadow the bladder. Hello. Are we on? Right now. Okay. Hi, everyone. Just pulling in another week. It's middle of the week, so actually it's Tuesday after a long weekend. So I hope some of you had tuned in over the weekend. Saturday we had a pretty good day. So anyways, today's the intermediate advanced pillow forms. So a lot of you have been, following along. Any form particular that anyone wants to do, Lucien? Smart strength? Oh. Okay. So, intelligent strength, I use the term building body intelligence, period. Right? Because body intelligence is building motor skill, integration of body, fine-tuning what balance and movement really is. So that's ultimately coordination. Most athletes have pretty good spatial awareness and a sense of that. Most good athletes develop good spatial awareness, timing, and body intelligence from practicing. But, someone that's actually superior in the way they can do things and have trained makes them a bit unique. We all have the same makeup. We have a mind, we have a body, and we have to train ourselves to work with whatever we have to heighten our understanding. So that's body intelligence. So what? Yeah. 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 So what body intelligence is and what fudging is really a superior way of utilizing your strength. And utilizing your strength really has to do with body mechanics, integration of body. So, with Kung Fu, it might be a little bit more, or even in Tai Chi, it might be a little bit more abstract as to what kind of power you develop. So a lot of times people think it's some kind of a mystical force. It's only mystical in the sense that you don't know how to practice or you don't know how to develop that skill because you think, how do I get power to a point and have it focused? So fudging is really releasing the power or at a power point, focus, at a target. And that's really what's the end goal. So whether you're a baseball player, a golfer, or someone that's hitting a tennis ball, any type of sport or activity that requires a focus power requires fudging. So fudging is taking the body and putting it through the motions so that you can focus that power, channel it in a coordinated way, hit the target, and make it explode. Right? So fudging is fa is to release, Ying is train strength. So the term fudging is really that kind of thing. It's an explosive power focused at a point so that you can do the most damage. So the most damage is when you're on impact. So here's the thing. When you chun kyo and you do a sliding step and you strike, the idea is to transfer the strength from here through the body to here on impact. And then you know what happens on impact? It's gone. So what most people can't do when they're trying to hit something is let it go. So what letting go is the follow through to the movement without being stiff, and you can release the power. So the way we used to talk about it, think about it, is sort of like a ball on the end of a rope. When you let it go and you throw it out there, once it hits on impact, it just goes limp. It's no longer there. Because if you threw it out there and it hit and then it stayed like a stick, then you have rigidity. So when you throw a punch, you don't need to do that. in a way, we do that when we practice with a partner. You throw the punch out and you let the person block, and so that's part of a training. But you shouldn't, when you're on impact to hit, really leave any latent energy or power there at the end, because that gives you a recoil. It comes back to you. So people that like break things and they stiffen at the end of it, and they stiffen excessively, on impact, the shock comes back into the body. You can damage your elbow or even break your collarbone because of that impact. So that's where you see these guys performing, breaking things, and then they end up with something broken. It's because they're so focused and had so mindful that they wanted to break this thing that they forgot about what they should be doing, and then they end up just psyched into that position, and you actually do damage to yourself. So fajing is really learning to release the power. But how do you develop that? You develop it through your training, building body understanding of how to use your strength. So using your strength is a process, and then when you release power, like when we do this, it's really learning to get the movement to the end so that you can actually strike and have an impact that's very penetrable. So when you do a punch and you throw it out, you focus, block, and strike. When you go like this, the power's gone once you let it go. So why? Because once the power's gone, it allows you to move to the next position, So that allows for more efficient transitions. So that kind of gives you some insight as to what it is. So there's no magic to this. It's really training and learning how to connect your body. So the legs, earlier class we talked about the horse and the leaning and so forth. And we talked about the archery stance and why is it called the archery stance. So you think about this as how something penetrates and is powerful. Think of drawing the bow, right? When you draw the bow, this side becomes rigid, this side becomes movement, right? The rigidity that's not tense is just firm and aligned. When you release that bow or the arrow and the string, it transfers the energy from that bow to the arrow, and it starts to fly forward. Any discrepancy in this hand is going to miss the target. Any tension here and not letting go is going to compromise the energy that's being transferred into the arrow. So that's how you have to think of it. When you throw a punch, when you draw the bow, you load it up, and it has this energy in it, but you have to, take a sliding step. At this point, you have to let it go, because everything has to focus at a point to let the power reach the end. So when it reaches the end, the object, say the arrow, it starts to go out and it starts to penetrate, because the focus of that power is transmitted right to the tip of that arrow, because it's in one line. But if it went like that, it wouldn't have the power. So when you throw the punch, it has to come up like this. And then it finishes. When you throw a punch, at the end of the movement, it has to turn. And the fajing is at the end of movement, like a little explosive cap at the end of the bullet. It hits, boom, it's gone. And the penetration is there. That's how your punch should be. That's what fajing is. So fajing is really a trained skill. Every strike would have a potential to have fajing depending on what the surface that you're using. If it's a phoenix eye, your movement is there. If it's a chop, your movement is there. If it's a punch, movement is there. If it's a back fist, boom. So every direction of movement has the ability to concentrate that power in a direction, but think of the movement and the body mechanics and how the movements tie together. So movements have to be compatible with direction. If I'm moving this way, my hand has to go. When I go like this, fajing, you go like this. You separate the body to allow that action to reach that point. So how much of it is body strength and how much is the arm. If there's more of your body going into it, then you have to just do that. Your power already is released because the hand is like this. Boom. You see? So that's really the final position, the body alignment, and the action creating that. So there's a lot of, that's all part of your body mechanics. All of that has to tie into the coordination that we develop when we do the form. So we're doing the form. We're doing this and this, 1, 2. So do we have to put a lot of power in it to get power to the end? No, we just have to practice the motion so that we can control, we can gauge the coordination. Okay? We can gauge where that's actually a point here. See, so that's what we're doing, is building the motor skill, how the body is moving with that movement. And then part of that has a look. If the movements look, so it's called good form, if it looks like it has good form, and it has good timing, and it has good execution, and it has good focus, that's the lead into how much power you can get into it. And then the body, as it becomes more accustomed to being synchronized and avoiding the sort of that tense stage, the wasted, the excessiveness in the joint or wherever your body has to let go in order to create that action. So a lot of times when you're just doing it on a physical level, thinking that you need strength to do a lot of movement, that actually misleads people. You don't need a lot of strength when you're coordinated, but you need some strength in order to build, some of the power. If it's more isolated, it's really more of a physical strength. Fajing it's physical, but yet it's not the same kind of physical strength as what we consider like in lifting or so forth. So they sometimes call that brute force. Sometimes they call that oxen strength. So it depends on what you study, but they always draw these analogies of what the wrong kind of strength is. So Fajing should be live, it should be action, it should be explosive, it should be connected, and it should be part of the total body. So, like if you did if you do Tai Chi or you do any of these at the more advanced levels of Kung Fu, it's really integration of body more than anything. It's really it avoids the rigidness stage, I'd say. Because the rigidness stage is what people see as the physical side of things. So that physicality, the excessiveness, has to be dialed down, toned down to bring up on the softer side the skill level. So when you bring the skill level up and it meets the deletion of the excessive stiffness, you find that balance point. So you're not totally soft and you're not totally stiff. You bring it together, and that would be the line that you want to approach. And once you reach that point, then the more efficient you become, the less strength you actually will need. So that's kind of how it's kind of a graph. And, as you go up in skill, the amount of strength that you actually need starts to go down. So that's really how you would focus your movement. So, it's just like when I turn like this we're looking at striking, but when I go like this, that is an action when you turn. Boom. That action is created by the speed of movement. So speed is where a lot of times power comes from. In fact, the faster it is, the better, because that's the way you can get the maximum power. But you can't practice fast. And the reason why you can't practice it fast all the time is because you miss things. If you're trying to build coordination and you do it fast, your body will respond, but it's not always 100% the way it should be. You have to kind of tweak it and dial it in so that it has a refinement that allows you to do that. It's like if your body is gears, if each one of these are gearing and you move fast, you could slip some gears and not actually get it to happen the way it's supposed to. But if all the gears are working correctly, then it should be synchronized. And then when one moves, they're all going to move. If nothing moves, it's stillness. So that's another one of the theories that you have to understand. So your body is made up of these segments that has to be integrated and efficient, right? So with each component that has to move, you have to recruit the correct musculature or the correct muscles. That's a motor skill based on timing and sequence. When you build that kind of timing and sequence into movement is only through training. And then once you train and you get the coordination, then you build the strength because you want to maximize that potential. So if you're training to be, just like any super athlete, if you're training to be at a very high level of competition, then you first have to build the mechanics and the body skill behind it, and then you start to strengthen it and speed it up and strengthen and speed it up, and then you cycle through until you perfect it. And that's what someone that's working toward this higher level is. But a lot of times people are not professionals, so we work through it, and you train and you get the most you can get out of your training, and to the best of your ability. You're not unless you are that type of super athlete, then you would go toward that level. But the average person really doesn't train as much as we should to get to that proficient level. But we just have that understanding that when we practice, in order to really get everything that we want into the movement, you have to learn to move your different components of your body. So while we're here and we're turning, we sink, turn. These are the phases of the movement to get the movement to where it's supposed to go. When you step, when you block, when you turn, when you lift, when you push, how do you get that body form? It's those minute subtleties that eventually will come into play. Just in the fact that when we go like this and I sink, we can look at it, we can do it fast. But do you actually capture the essence of what you're doing when you're building? Is the legs going through the process to get you to where you want to go with the body form? Does the body respond completely in order for you to capture that, the essence of that motion? If your body learns it to that level, then it starts to evolve, and then it starts to connect, and it starts to happen when you sink, when you lift, when you sink, when you grab, when you go like this, and you turn, you're going to get the power to the end of the movement and still be connected. So that takes years and years of practice, not because, because the idea is that you have to practice for a long time. It's because your body, your mind, the body, the wiring, it takes time to adapt. And that adaptability and the conversion of what you're building here on the, from the neurons on down, the motor neurons, all the stuff that's tied to the musculature that gets them to fire at the right time, doesn't happen like that. You can't say, well, I want that to happen, and it doesn't. It'd be nice if you could do that, but it doesn't work like that. You have to go through a process. It's like drawing a straight line. It's not straight the first time. It's not even level. But if you do it over and over again, you refine that, and you refine that concept of the finesse of doing that. That's a motor skill in everything that we're doing. It's kind of movement, writing, calligraphy, sword play, your staff. All of this requires certain kinds of motor skill. If you don't have these things programmed into the body and it doesn't know it, then it has to learn it. That's why when you learn something, you go through this awkward stage. When you first learn a form, you can't recognize a lot of the movements because it's all new. So when you sink your elbow and you thrust like this and you sink, these are positions your body doesn't know, so it's a little awkward. Those are actually fairly easy to do because they're kind of one-directional. But when we go like this, and we go like this, like in the fourth form, and we go like this in the footwork, or we go like this when we turn, and we go like this, these movements are all somewhat new to the body when we first learn. So when I go like this, I cross. I have something here that creates that. See? So I'm here. 1, 2, 3. Is it just my hands? Or my body has to shift, and then my leg has to come into play. And then I reset. So when I go like this, there's something that always has to happen to set up the movements. All those setups, you go through 300 movements in a form. How many setups do you have? All of these things takes time. It takes time for you to see and expose yourself, and your mind has to be open to absorb that information. Then you start to make your transformation. And the longer you practice, the better you get. The more detail you begin to understand, the more you will start to investigate it. So it does get very, people that are really involved with it, it's very interesting. People that are kind of just go through the motions, it's very hard to convince you that that's, the way it should be done. But the thing is, it's pretty deep and very, that's where people think it's mystical. What's the magic to Fa Jing? There's really no magic to it. It's really effort, practice, and deeper understanding. And that's really tied to time and experience. Then you actually will achieve as a teacher or a more advanced student. And that's what it is. It's a journey. The depth of knowledge comes from going over it and visiting and experiencing a lot. So when it comes to, striking is one thing, but you have to build good movement and precision into your positions. Why does the hand have to be here rather than there, rather than here? Not too straight. Why don't the elbows lock? Why should they be softened? When you go forward, when you drill the movement, why is it like that? When you turn and you come out and you sink into your position, why is that part of that? Why don't you just go from here and just go through the motions, and you can see that there's nothing connected in the legs. So if you're here and I turn, I go to my horse and I turn. When I turn, the body creates a strength. That strength is body intelligence. So body intelligence is not just Fa Jing, it's throughout everything that you do. So as you're building the idea of focusing power, build the idea into the soft power. You have Fa Jing, Jing is trained skill. Soft power, Ging, is part of that. Spiraling energy, it's part of that. So there's so many different kind of energies. Just that striking is just one idea. But don't take energy and make it into this idea that it's magical. It's magical when you see it, but all it is really a trained skill. So if I can get that idea across to you, then it'll kind of open up, your mind that the form offers so many different things. So when you train, you're here. Okay, that's one. If I'm here and I step up and I turn, 1, 2, 3. So what's the position? What do I have to do? I sink and I turn. Why is it here, not here, not here, not like this? All of this has to do with the body mechanics, capitalizing on a position, the direction of the movement, the transition, the turning, the twisting, the back fist, the cut, the turn, the thrust, the open, the push. So all of these, I just went through the transition and the subtleties by slowing it down so you see the body is moving. it's not just two-dimensional, it's multi-dimensional movement tied throughout the whole body. So that's why it does take a long time to get to a more advanced level. Because, what does the term intermediate, advanced represent? It represents a certain amount of skill, but it's very hard to define what intermediate and advanced is if it depends on what gauge you're looking at. You're gauging form, you're gauging sequence, you're gauging execution. All of those things come into play. So there's levels and gradations of what intermediate and advanced is. So, that has to be really redefined. So, everything is kind of lumped into this category of, beginner, advanced, intermediate, advanced, super advanced, mastery, Sifu level. These are just labels. Skill level actually doesn't really have a label because that's really, in martial arts, it's really a goal to struggle with and get to a certain place. But if we're wanting to define it as to who to learn from or who is the people to follow, then it's probably one way of categorizing those teachers in a level so that you know where to go with the information. But obviously, someone that has been at it a long time and that has actually trained for that period of time, they would have a deeper understanding. So you could be at this for a long, long time and never practice, then it's just a title. So that's something that you have to kind of understand when you're going through it. So anyone that's watching or following that has questions, those are good things to kind of send to us so that we can exchange our ideas and thoughts. And if you appreciate this type of information, then that's one of the end goals, is to get someone that's watching and viewing us to realize that there's a lot to be learned and a lot to understand. And on that note, I think it's pretty close. So next Thursday, we won't be doing this class simply because we have an event with the Parkinson's Foundation from 1 to 2, and it's going to be a Zoom thing, and so we won't be using live stream for that. But you can come back, and we have the morning class that we can go over things, and we also will have the Saturday class that's intermediate and advanced. But on Thursday morning, because we have the Kung Fu class, if you have a question and if you're tuning in, I could go over that in the morning. So there shouldn't be a problem with that. So even some of the newer people, intermediate, advanced, beginner, intermediate, can kind of view the forms either way. All right, so give us a thumbs up and subscribe, share the event and or this class, and talk to you next time.